Well, top of the morning, Southern Oregon, and welcome back to the Real Estate Show. We're so glad to have you today. We're going to be interviewing Giles of Mutual Mortgage today, and specifically talking about the jobs report that came out this week, and it was full of surprises. So Giles of Mutual Mortgage is going to be dissecting that for us, and also talking about how it relates to Southern Oregon buyers, mortgages, and the general market. So while we wait for Guy to come into the studio, let's take a minute and go through our 3 counties like we do every week and talk about the local statistics. So starting with Jackson County, Jackson County prices year over year this week were basically neutral, unchanged. The average residential home in Jackson County was selling for $522,179 this week. The number of solds year over year in Jackson County were up 7%. We had 56 residential closings on SOMLS in Jackson County this week. The number of listings year over year in Jackson County this week were up a whopping 13%, continuing the trend. We have 871 residential listings active on SOMLS this week in Jackson County. Josephine County prices were up 12% this week, year over year. The average residential home in Josephine County costing $523,588. The number of solds year over year this week in Josephine County were up 6%. We had 32 closings in the residential market in Josephine County on SOMLS this week. The number of listings year over year in Josephine County were up a whopping 13%, just like Jackson County. We have 410 active residential listings on SOMLS in Josephine County this week. Isn't that something? Klamath County prices were up 4% year over year this week. The average residential home in Klamath County costing $341,818. The number of solds year over year in Klamath County, however, were down 57% this week, year over year. We only had 11 closings in the residential market in Klamath County on SOMLS this week. The number of listings year over year in Klamath County were up an incredible 18%. We now have 353 active residential listings on SOMLS in Klamath County this week. So folks, you can see the trend is continuing. We have more and more listings coming on the market. We're still in that in-between stage where we still have more buyers than listings, but it's getting better, especially since last year. And coming into the studio now is Guy Giles from Mutual Mortgage. He's going to help us dissect not only the jobs report, but help us understand what it means to local Southern Oregon real estate and buyers and sellers. Well, Guy Giles, thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Hey, well, it's good to be back. Hunting season started, and I'm not out there right now, which is kind of weird, but
Well, we appreciate you taking time out to talk to us.
yes. Well, I'm
Um,
happy to be here.
and we
Yeah, we did have some jobs numbers. They've been kind of going in our favor the last couple of months here, and now we just got kicked like right in the teeth on Friday. So, um, anyway, hopefully it won't be forever. But anyway, the BLS jobs numbers they were expecting 140,000 new jobs, and we got 100 or 254,000 jobs. So big surprise. You know, I mean, I
so
just
the jobs are up.
yes, yeah, quite a bit. And So, and then they revised the last couple months up 72,000 jobs too, where they've been revising them down the whole time. So I have
Wow.
a theory about it. My theory is that it wasn't really working having the economy crash right before the election. So let's have the economy look really, really good before the election. I think they're just trying everything they can do to make everything look like they need it to for their narrative. But that said, these numbers are a little bit, well, the BLS numbers are the ones we've been complaining about forever. But you can't really dispute this, not right now. Maybe they get revised in, I don't know, December or so. But I guess it just remains to be seen. They were really strong, and it's hurt the bond market quite a bit. So anyway, our nice little
About
dip in
that.
the
Let's talk.
rates, we're going to get a break in that for a bit.
Yeah, but let's explain a little bit more about how that hurt the bond market and what that means to Southern Oregon mortgages.
Well, what this stuff generally means is there's a couple of ways you can make money, or at least a couple of paces you can make money, and you can make it fast in the stock market, or you can make it a lot slower investing in something like a 10-year treasury or a 30-year mortgage-backed security. So really, if we have a really good economy and a really strong jobs, then the stock market's going to do well, and everybody's going to put their money towards that rather than getting a low return for a lot of years. So that's
Gotcha.
really what it boils down to, and it ties in with inflation also, because if inflation's high, that's going to depend on where you want to put your money also. So we feel like we've gotten some inflation under control for a little while, and we're starting to see everything kind of go in the right direction. And this was, the last 2 days of numbers coming out have hurt us quite a bit. I don't think it's going to continue forever. I really, really don't. I'm hoping this is just some politics. But when you dig deeper, into the numbers, it was just a good jobs number. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to say. A lot of this was a household survey as one component of it, where they call people and they say, hey, did anybody get a job in your house? And they call about 60,000 people. So it should be a little bit more of an accurate survey.
Uh-huh.
And they said that they anticipate that 430,000 jobs came out of that. So granted, 54% of them were 16 to 19-year-olds, which that's the only thing that seems a little fishy to me, because you can see a lot of kids getting summer jobs in July or June for the summer, but not the month they go back into school.
Huh.
Maybe they went and got a bunch of full-time jobs, but anyway, again, maybe I'm wrong, and the stock market or the markets are really, really good for jobs. So I'm just kind of shaking my head. I really don't. I locked all my people yesterday ahead of all of this. So thankfully anyway, I saw this coming a little bit from some indicators. So
So are you saying that you're afraid that the interest rates are not going to keep going down because the economy is getting better?
um I'm saying that some jobs numbers came out, and that's going to put a stall on this thing. Uh,
Okay.
I think that we have seen this BLS report. We've joked about its name sounding a little bit like something else. We've joked about it all year long, getting revised, 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 revised. And every time it's been revised, the numbers have been revised down.
Mm-hmm.
And this all seems super odd to me right before the election, that all of a sudden now they're revising numbers up. And I'm not
Okay.
saying it's all crap, but I'm saying it just doesn't smell quite right to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a little cynical, but it's going to be a pause in the rates coming down.
Uh-huh. And what are the chances this is a one-off upward spike and not the beginning of a trend?
I don't know. Maybe there's new trends. Maybe kids get jobs in September now instead of when school gets out. I don't know. I honestly can't really explain this a ton.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can look at where the jobs came from. About 31,000 were government jobs. About 45,000 were healthcare jobs. I can understand the healthcare. About 78,000, the biggest portion, and I'm talking about just the BLS numbers there,
Uh-huh.
were leisure and hospitality. So maybe everybody travels and eats out right after school gets back in too now. I honestly, I'm just kind of a little bit dumbfounded by what happened, and it's not just because it goes contrary to what I want is some lower rates for people so that they can afford houses, but maybe I'll have a little bit more information by next week as I can just kind of look at more information coming in. But like I say, it wasn't completely not anticipated that this happened. That's why I locked everybody in my pipeline yesterday and the day before, because when Jerome Powell was speaking, he was a whole lot more what they call hawkish on the jobs market and
He was more
oh,
pessimistic.
sorry, yeah, I
Yeah,
meant,
no, that's fine.
and so he's been saying that we have a lot of weakness, and he just really reversed that a few days ago, saying there's a lot of strength. So I assume maybe he had a glimpse into some of the numbers that were coming out, and that moved the markets before it even happened for a day and a half. And again, thankfully I was ahead of it.
But those two opinions were awfully close together, so it is something of a surprise.
It is. So is all we can do, I guess, is just kind of deal with what we got.
Yeah, yeah.
Old
And
bulbs, I just put a hat on. You just gotta
we're gonna
adapt.
we're gonna take a quick commercial break and say thank you to our sponsors. We're talking to Guy Giles, Mutual Mortgage. We'll be right back. Well, hey, Southern Oregon, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. So happy to have you today. We're chatting with Guy Giles on about the jobs report this week and what that may or may not do to mortgages in Southern Oregon. Guy, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Well, thanks. Now that I got my little pity party out of the way last segment, we can go on to something more constructive. I'm not saying that rates reversed and they're bad like they were before. So, it's not like we lost that much ground or anything.
So they're not going to go up, but maybe the next reduction will be smaller.
Well, last I heard, there's still rumors of I do believe that they're going to continue to lower rates. I think that is what is going to happen. Everybody's hurting way too much for this. Even the small banks, there's a lot of stress on everybody with these rates up where they are right now. I'm hoping that one jobs number doesn't reverse the whole Fed, and maybe things settle down right after November. Who knows?
Well,
but people are still buying. I still have them coming in the door every day. We've gotten quite a few purchases and refinances, and we're still over a percentage point lower than we were, a year ago.
So what was it a year ago?
I mean, just depending. I mean, it's
well, right.
That's
but
a hard thing to say. There are so many variables that go into quoting a rate, but I had seen people in the high sevens.
Yes.
And right now, I'm not really locking anybody above low sixes. So, and I got one this week at a mid-5 on a 30-year fix. So, and I didn't even charge him points. Just all the stars aligned on a FHA refinance. So,
well, that's so exciting. What a big difference in just 12 months.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, we're a ton better than we were. I haven't really done the math. Maybe I'll do that during a break or something and see what that 1 percentage point would do on the average house right now. But I will submit to you that it's a whole lot lower than it was. So I'm not going to jump out the window or anything like that. But a little frustrating after just a really, really good trend for a while now. So we will just have to see, see where it lands. We can only control what we can control, I guess.
Well, and that's another reason for doing the show every week is because we can bring the most up-to-date, up-to-the-minute, real-time information so that people can decide what they want to do or not do next in their real estate life.
Yeah, and there's no part of me that says wait till next year because all the housing's gonna crash. You know, I am a firm believer that right now is kind of a sweet spot. And
Yes, it does seem to be so.
yeah, yeah. So I guess I did have one this week that wasn't really going to one seller that felt like they still lived in the old days, and my people moved on to another house, and in that next house they were really agreeable with working with the buyer. So
Hmm.
still some good deals to be had out there. Maybe they're not great deals like they were before, but if you look back 5 years from now, it'll feel like a great deal for sure.
And that's the thing. Hindsight is more educational.
Yeah, and I just don't see any. I mean, maybe a little minor corrections in the houses, but I just don't see any kind of a big crash that I keep hearing people wanting to wait for, for this big crash. But the reality is that we've been writing good loans for a while. And, we were able to get a settlement on the longshoreman, at the end of last week.
Wasn't that remarkable?
Yeah. So that was good. They kicked that can down till after the election too, thankfully. So I don't know. I'm just gonna got a lot of people to take care of in my pipeline, and that's just gonna be my focus and dealing with them as they come through the door. So
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
if you did one of those buy downs, or you have a family member that did, and now your rates adjusted to over 8% or high mid sevens, call me because I'm refinancing people now, and a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people had to add some credit card debt or different things to their over the last few years, and you should start getting a little bit of relief on that, with your next bill because the Fed has lowered rates, and those are the things that they affect. Um, but who knows, even if you have a decent rate, but you've somehow accumulated a lot of debt, it might be worth at least looking at it, even if we're not redoing your first mortgage, to do
Hmm.
something to kind of consolidate it.
Well, isn't the fall and winter time a good time to do refinancing? The lenders are less busy. You're understanding the market that you're in because it's all going to change again next year.
I know. I don't really look at seasons as far as refinancing. I just look at pain, and we've come out of a pretty painful time, and
Hmm.
now, maybe people do want to reorganize a little bit. And, there was a lot of boats bought, a lot of cars bought, motorcycles, things that people are probably still paying on. And I've had people that have come in, and I'm not a huge proponent of let's just use your house for an ATM, but let's
Right.
be honest, people have more equity in their house than they ever have in the history of the world, or this country anyway. And if that's what it takes to make you a little bit more solvent. I've had people come in and they've raised their rate on their first mortgage, but now they're saving $900 a month
Wow.
because of other debt that they've had to get during whatever they've been through in the last couple of
Hmm.
years. So it's not
Hmm.
right for everybody, but it's definitely worth sitting down and talking about for a minute. So,
Yeah, yeah. And those buy down loans that you were talking about, those were meant to be temporary,
hmm.
just something to get through the hard times. And now, like you said, they're a whole point lower.
Well,
So at least have the conversation.
I think it's worth it. And the way that, and I'm not like this perfect guy that doesn't read things wrong, because we all thought rates were going to go down, but all the people that were getting those buy downs back then, and I lost a few realtors over that because I didn't think it was the greatest thing. I locked people in at that point at mid fives for a 30-year fixed, but they were so excited that they could get a 4.5% for a year, and then the rate that I was giving them for a year, and it was just like, now they're adjusting and they're up over 8%. And I'm not getting calls from my people saying that they're stuck in those things, but I'm getting calls from other people saying that they are. And,
Hmm.
it might be time to take a look at this thing. You
Well,
know,
and that's why you want somebody like you who's local, who's experienced, who's right here, so that you can have these conversations either on the phone or in person and understand what the consequences are of any given decision.
Yeah, you want to look at the whole thing. If you come in and see me or get online and one of us tells you you're going to save $800 a month, but you only have 6 years left on your loan, you don't want to turn that back into a 30-year loan for sure. So, maybe, I mean, a lot of times, especially in the refinance world, you might have 22 years left on your loan, and then you come in and refinance with a different rate at a 20-year loan. You're still knocking 2 years off the loan and
Oh,
saving
there you go.
every month. So there's a lot of different strategies and things we can look at. I had a dentist that did a refinance with me this week, and he only did his loan 2 years ago with me, but in reality, they're not pulling cash out, they're not doing anything. But if they do this with the lower rate and take that $417 a month that they're saving, they could have their loan paid off in like 21 years, making
Wow.
the same payment that they are right now.
Wow.
So there's strategies and ways to look at this stuff that can make a lot of sense. And I'm always happy to talk.
Well, and it's like you said, it's a sweet spot. The sellers are more accommodating still right now because the economy isn't great, but it's getting better. So there's more inventory. So that's good for buyers. The sellers are accommodating, which is good for buyers. And the sellers are not having to compete with as much inventory as they're going to next year. I mean, we've all heard the predictions that more and more people are going to be putting their homes on the market in 2025 because they're tired of waiting.
Yeah, yeah. There's just no reason to spend your whole life. You get in the house that you want to, and if you can afford it, we can figure something out as the rates go down. Because again, we're not going to charge bank fees for your refinance when that happens. There'll still be some title charges and things, but the people that I'm looking at and redoing right now, it absolutely makes sense for them, and they're in the house, and they have been for the last year or two in the one they want to be in.
Well,
So,
and what an opportunity for upsizers. I mean, we're going to have to take a break real quick, but what are your, quick thoughts on that? And then we'll bring it up in the next segment.
are you upside as far as like where I think prices are going?
No, people who want to sell a smaller home and buy a bigger home.
Yeah, or sell your bigger home and go to a smaller home. I mean, it just depends on all of your, as far as your goals go. But I do think that people are probably pretty ready to move on.
Well, and I find that some people have been waiting since before COVID.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll talk
Seeing
more
that
about
stuff.
that in the break. We're talking to Guy Giles, Mutual Mortgage, one of our sponsors. Thank you so much for helping us bring the show to the airwaves every week. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show, folks. I'm Alice Lema. I'm a broker here in beautiful Southern Oregon with John L. Scott Real Estate. And today we have my great delight to interview Guy Giles from Mutual of Mortgage. And just a quick reminder, this show is going to be rebroadcast tomorrow, Sunday at 8 a.m. So you get to hear Guy's great advice and great predictions for 2025 all over again. So thanks for coming back on the show, Guy.
Well, it's good to be back. Yeah, it's been just another crazy year. I don't know if I've ever looked back for a while now and said, "Oh, that was just a normal year." Feels like it's gonna be something, that we're dealing with no matter what. But life has to go on, and we might as well do it in the house that we want to be in. So I know we talked a little bit on the break about, some people get a bigger house, some people get a smaller house. I'm still seeing a lot of people moving in together. I have a couple up in Seattle that is, they own a house up there. They're not super old. They're, I don't know, I guess in their mid-30s, and her parents are down here, and this is where they came from, and they're looking to buy a bigger piece of property that both families can live on, and that
That's
actually
cool.
brings up something else as far as that goes, because these ADUs that are popping up everywhere, you really want those to be legal in order for us to be able to count that in.
Yes, you
So
do.
if you get a legal ADU, we're able to count that income straight off. Where a lot of people in the past have said, "Oh, my mom gives me rent," or this person, and there's really not a good mechanism for border income when you're buying a house. So with the ADUs, you can at least use that income to offset maybe you upsizing or having your, somebody move in with you. And we got in the middle of one of those just recently where we were told that the ADU was legal, everything was good, and looking at the county, they had it labeled as a duplex. I mean, everything looked great, and then when we got the appraisal back and everything done, it was not a legal anything. The county changed it back to a single family
Oh,
property,
no.
and we had to lose the income from that. Thankfully, I was able to, kind of scramble and keep Humpty Dumpty together, and they got closed. But it's, I've been cautioning people recently, like this couple moving back down here from Seattle, that, when you find a place, we're going to need a little bit of extra income from you. So make sure that you're, that you find something that is a legal ADU, and we can collect some rent. But unless you're like caretaking for somebody, it's really, really difficult to just use border income, and it's a bar that I don't think I've ever been able to meet, so as long as I've been here, and it completely makes sense. My dad's gonna move in and he's gonna be doing this, but it's a particular loan that they can't be on, and so you're not able to use their income anyway. Every case is a little bit different, but the ADU thing, I think, is really what's going to change a lot of how we do business down here.
Well, and that's an interesting observation because people don't always understand that there's multiple layers of legalities in the ADUs. It's not just getting permits from the building department, but you have to have the approval of the zoning department that says it's an additional dwelling and has its own address and has its own utilities. And
Yeah,
it can be attached or detached, but I think that's where some of the confusion comes in because folks have extra buildings or extra apartments attached to their home, and it was permitted by the building department, and so they might think it's a legal ADU, but it's actually not zoned properly.
man. Then did they change a bunch of those? You probably know more about that than me. Laws as far as in the city being able to do that, and I mean, are they having to rezone all that, or are they just?
It was already done inside the city limits. The whole state of Oregon has multifamily zoning
Damn.
in town, and then in the rural districts, like you were talking about with your folks from up north, the ability to have up to 900 square feet. That's what they're working on next,
Wow.
outside of town.
Well, historically, we haven't had pricing hits on ADUs, but you do have a pricing hit if it is a duplex or a triplex.
What does that mean? A pricing hit?
So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have what are called LLPAs, or loan level pricing adjustments. So if you buy, your rate's going to be your rate, and then they have what they call these pricing adjustments on there. So if your FICO score is, below 680, there's going to be a pricing hit for that. If it's a 2-unit property or an investment, there's going to be a pricing.
Oh, okay. So the
So
loan costs you more.
So yeah, and then I just as we're talking here, I'm starting to think that the government is in control of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac still, and I'll bet they'll come up with a way to start charging extra if you're able to collect a little bit of rent from an ADU that's on your property. So hopefully I didn't just give them an idea, but seeing the way things go and that money hungry monster, the government, that's probably going to be coming down the road next.
Yeah, well, maybe,
You
but
used to be able to buy a second home. And the reason I say this is you used to be able to buy a second home, but you were not allowed to rent it out like a vacation rental by owner.
I remember that.
And then Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae were like, "Oh, hey, that's okay. You can rent it out a certain amount of the year."
I
And then
remember
they
that
came back
too.
and said, "Oh, because you guys are renting at a certain amount of the year, now we're going to charge that like it's an investment property." So in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's eyes, they're identical pricing to buy second home as an investment property where it used to be identical pricing as a primary residence or a second home.
Uh-huh,
So,
uh-huh.
uh, I just thought about wait for them to make a little bit more money.
Well, yeah, and at the volume that they're working at, $1,000 alone is buckets and buckets of money, right?
It definitely
Not,
is.
and I'm not saying that they're charging $1,000. I'm just making that number up, but
Yeah, I mean, it all breaks down to a monetary, figure, which generally translates to rate. And it's not like you couldn't just pay that little fee and just be done with it. But most people don't have, on a $4,000 loan, if you got charged 1.1 points or percent because it is a investment or a second home, you're gonna probably end up eating 3/8 in rate, where that $3,000 is probably gonna cost you
and
$30 or $40,000
that's ongoing,
over
is
the
what
life
you're
of the loan.
saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Huh.
uh, there's good ways to strategize, and again, that's why
Mhm.
it's good to come in and meet, and that's not gonna cost you any money to do that.
Yeah. Well, and also that brings up a good point that this kind of a market is great for looking for investment, whether you're adding to your portfolio or getting your first investment property, or what about moving out of your existing home, smaller home, and renting that out and buying a bigger home? How does that look on paper with you?
It looks good. We just have to get a signed lease on that property that you're departing, and a lot of people are doing that. I mean, I think collecting properties right now is a good thing because you're just seeing such a push to have apartments and ADUs downtown, and you're just gonna be absorbing the extra people with that rather than building new single family houses. So it feels to me like it would be a good thing to have some houses. That, of course, unless whatever administration coming in decides to charge us on future capital gains, which
Well, yeah, let's not go there. That'll make everybody nervous. And it might not even happen. That's a pretty
yeah,
crazy thing.
I,
Yeah,
I
but
can't
I get your
I can't
point.
imagine, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes yeah, you're right. Let's probably not go there. But I do think that getting in a house, and if you can buy an extra house, you're gonna be better in the long run because there's just a finite amount of property, especially in the state. So much of the land is not buildable or developable. So as more people need houses, if I would think that that would bode well for a good income stream for you in the future.
Yeah, it's a great wealth building technique, especially for the youngers. How old were you when you bought your first rental?
Um, I guess 29, something like that.
So
So
you were a youngster.
wasn't even this century. Think about it. That's crazy. It was almost this century, but it wasn't. Yeah, thanks. Now I'm gonna go into this weekend feeling just a little older.
No, no, no. That was the question was just to point out to people that,
So
you
the
know,
the mirror points out to me every day, so we're good. It wasn't
okay.
a surprise. But I don't regret it, and I've probably said it 100 times on this show. Who'd have thought, that what kind of idiot would pay $137,000 for a house?
Right.
And actually, the house that I had before that, up on Butte Falls Highway, that I sold for 117,000 when I bought that, I'd paid 80,000 for. It sold in 2020 for $480,000.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of Guy Giles from Mutual Mortgage. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show, everybody. We're talking to Guy Giles, and in the last segment, we were starting to talk about rental properties and how to own rental properties. And Guy was a youngster when he had his first rental, and I'm a landlord too. And just want to talk about how you don't have to be anybody special to have a second property as a rental.
No, and generally, like you were talking about earlier, your departing residence. And by the way, if somebody is going to buy or look to get into investments, Alice is one of the best ones I've ever seen with dealing with just generating wealth through that. So Anyway, a little plug for you because I really do mean
Well,
that.
thank you.
But I rarely talk about Butte Falls Highway, which was actually my first purchase.
Yeah.
That was $80,000, and it was 18 acres with a single wide. Um,
Was it
and-
really?
oh yeah, and I
Your
missed
first
acres.
rental was rural property?
No. The first house that I bought. But
Oh, okay.
when we talk about, just generating wealth, that house, that would have been probably 94, something like that.
1994.
Yeah, so that was $80,000. Sold it for 117, and I was just playing around last night on the computer and found that place they did build a little like 1,300 square foot stick built house on it, and it just sold for $480,000.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
man, I got engaged on that little bass pond that I had right there with my
Oh,
wife,
how
and
romantic.
yeah, well, it wasn't. I didn't even have a ring. That's who I was back then. But anyway, 30 years now, so she stuck with me. But even that one, who'd have thought? I mean, if you get the right property, doesn't matter if it's the best house or the worst house in the world, these things will appreciate over time. I would have never thought of $500,000 for that little 18 acres way in the middle of nowhere at Butte Falls Highway.
See, and Southern Oregon is famous for that. And people just don't quite understand that even if you buy in at the top of the market, if you wait a little while, Southern Oregon's desirability is what drives the prices up consistently. It may not go up in 24 months like during COVID, but over 3 to 5 years,
I've
everybody's house is always worth more.
yeah, I'm
You
I
can't lose. You just can't
yeah,
lose in Southern Oregon.
I really believe that. If you're in a big city and you're trying to buy some commercial, that might not be a good idea, but people are always going to have a place to live. You can't just remote work, or you can't remote live. So you got to have a bed. Um, so I guess we'll kind of see where it goes, but I know I've been saying forever, even that first rental that I bought, I mean, I bought that not a long time before the big crash, and I'm talking like 2009, and it's still worth way more than it was in 2009, and so I rode that, down.
So psychologically, how did you go through that downturn?
Well, it didn't really affect me because people still needed a place to rent. So it wasn't like that hurt. I mean, it psychologically, I guess, when you're seeing foreclosures and everything that was happening, it was like, well, that kind of sucks. But unless you sell it, you didn't really lose that money anyway. So
And you were able to keep it rented during the downturn?
yeah, so if you just hang on to stuff, in the long run, it's gonna be all right. I think right like this month, I probably struggled with rental stuff as much as ever because I've got a person in a rental that decided not to pay rent, and the judge gave her another 45 days to go. So on the 10th, she's supposed to be out, and I really hope that she leaves my house intact, and gets all of her stuff out because there are some tough rental laws in this state. So I mean, it's not all roses. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have to get somebody out, it's not as easy as it was. And I'm not a heartless person that just wants to kick somebody out on the street. But our lease was up, and I did a no cause eviction, and the judge still gave her 45 days. So
That's
I,
shocking,
I haven't
actually.
had rent in a few months. I mean, yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It wasn't like I told her I was going to kick her out, so I was going to put somebody in there for more money. It's like we were at the end of our lease, and
Yeah. So,
so
yeah. Well, and for those of you who don't know this, Oregon is the only state in the union that is a rent control state. We don't have rent control cities like California and some other places. The entire state of Oregon is rent control. Having said that, landlording in Oregon is still a great endeavor, and we don't have enough landlords because of the rules. A lot of people have gotten out of the business. And then the rents are high because there's not enough rental units to go around. So anybody who wants to be a landlord, I encourage you to consider it. Know the laws. Talk to Guy Giles. He has some great landlord packages.
I have some great firsthand experience at least. And it has been a really good, they have been really good investments overall. So
Well,
I'm not.
let's talk about the kind of loans people have to get if they want investment property. I mean, not moving out of the house you bought, but like if you're going to go out and buy specifically a rental property, what does
If
that loan look
if you're
like?
gonna do that, I would really encourage you to figure out how to come up with about 25% down. You're gonna get a lot better deal, historically. I mean, you can get one with 15% down, but it's ugly. Yeah, I wouldn't even like raise eyebrows and say, hey, let's go down that road. Even 20% down on an investment property is not super pretty, but you start getting into 25, 30% down, you're in really, really good shape.
And is
And
that because your mortgage is lower or because your terms of the loan are better?
the terms of the loan get better. I mean, they just, I guess whoever they are figured out that people are a lot less likely to default the more skin you have in the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it boils down to. They don't want to go back to 2006, 2007 with no money down buying investment properties.
Yeah, you remember that?
I do. I
Wow.
I do. And I didn't do that either. Just like the buy downs, I did not do that. And I just, if it wasn't for smart women, I'd be curled up in a ball in the corner. But these two ladies told me, don't sell those loans. And I could have made a lot of money and I didn't. And I'm so happy for those two ladies. So they're both retired out of the business now, but they saved a lot of people a lot of heartache. Yeah.
Yeah, well, bless them
But,
for that. So
but it's,
25% down.
I do love move the departing residence thing though. I mean, really, because you generally, you had a kid, something changed, and you need a little bit of a bigger house or something else, and then you can just buy the other one as an owner occupied. And I'm not talking about doing something illegal or wrong. Go find another house that you really, really like, and then rent yours out. And
Uh-huh.
that's how I've got rentals, and I didn't even do it on purpose, to be honest. It just kind of worked out that way, and then I looked back and it turned out to be a pretty good deal.
And so, do you have a rent conversation with the landlord client, landlord borrower, just to make sure that they understand and the underwriter understands that the rent's going to be paying the mortgage? I'm just wondering what that conversation looks like.
Well, first thing we do is I'll generally get with their agent, and find out what their house is worth. I mean, sometimes it does make more sense to sell than to, accumulate a rental. So they can pretty much figure out, what that house would rent for. So then, we kind of know going in, you're going to lease it out for 800, $800, or are you going to lease it out for $2,000, and then we just kind of know the math going in. So you're going to have, if you're new to this and you have a new rental coming in, they do like a 25% vacancy rate. So if you're making $2,000 on that house, they're only going to give you credit for like $1,500 of it.
Important piece of information.
Yeah. So, so there's different strategies and different ways to look at it. And the earlier you can talk to me about it, kind of the better.
Mhm. But it's another reason to come in and talk to you in person because this idea of wealth building over time, I mean, a person could come and sit with you for 20 minutes and map out all these purchases into the next 10 to 15 years. So you have a strategy.
Absolutely. And we want to look at the whole thing, even I don't know what numbers you've seen if you look at different things than me, but I'm still hearing that we're going to be what 5.6% for next year in appreciation. And
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to have to talk about that on the next show, but there's a lot of good news coming down the pike.
yeah, little bit of a setback this week with the BLS numbers, but overall, things are a lot better than they were a year ago still.
Well, and let's see if they change them again like they've been doing.
We will see. We will see. That was a fun
We'll
day.
see. Well, Guy Giles, it's always a pleasure. We always learn something. Thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Okay, Southern Oregon, that wraps it up for us this week. Come back next week. We'll have great information next time. Bye now.